You're listening to Fish Out of Water, the podcast where feeling out of place becomes the start of something new. Dive in with us. Let's explore stories, insights, and real conversations that help you swim forward with purpose.
Welcome to Fish Out of Water, episode 8, season 2. So excited that we have gotten this far in. Today, we are talking about the braided community when our currents meet. And so up until now, we've really been talking about how rise is a part of us in terms of the different core temperaments that we exhibit in ourselves and how they show up in places of fear or times of fear, situations of fear, versus how we show up in those core temperaments when we're operating out of a place of strength and confidence, right? So today we really want to dig down a little bit deeper now into understanding how the 4 styles support, balance, and refine one another. So today we're going to do it a little bit different. We've kind of done it in the past this way, but Brett is the key person here. And I'm going to be really asking a lot of questions. Hopefully they're questions that you guys want to hear. If there's things that are not covered in this episode, please leave any questions below. We'll be happy to address them in the future. And on the in the comments, we will respond there as well. So let's start with this first, is that when we talk about rise, there's a kind of duality going on here. And the first part is that we do not rise alone, and we have rise as our core temperament analog. Is that what it's called? What's it called? It starts with an A. That's the day. Sure. Yes, that's what we're talking about. We haven't used that word yet, so it's not at the top of my brain. I apologize. And we rise differently depending on who is around us, depending on what the situation is like as well. And so, Brett, can you take us through what we've talked about with the 4 rise core temperaments, but specifically, let's just review what they represent or who they represent, both in fear, but also from a place of strength, and how that might look depending on the other core temperaments around them.
So as we sought to kind of build out like a 2.0 version of what we're building in, we've been through each of the individual episodes where we've kind of dialed down a little bit, but not exhaustively by any stretch into each of the different temperaments. But now what we're wanting to look at is how are we influencing one another in this developmental community, in this, whether it's team, whether you're at work, working through productivity tasks, or you're with your group of friends. What does it look like? And what are some of these core indicators that we'll see in and through each other that draws out the strength or draws out that essential passion that might exist in us? That the reflective is really drawn towards clarity. And so that
and that clarity is all about asking questions and like, have we addressed this? Have we addressed that?
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
And but I think then it's also, let's tie it to something else, because yes, questions as the essential point, but it's creating motion that's measured. So it like a lot of times the reflective can be seen as a stick in the mud. They're just trying to constantly slow everything down versus creating motion that is measured, creating something that is intentional, but still moving. And when we match that against the intentional person who is bringing this high level of connection, this multiple people in the room feeling connected and energized and focused on that, when you put these two together, now all of a sudden there's a different kind of strength as they move together. And it's this shared level of experience. It's the shared level of responsibility. And you throw the supportive into the middle of that, And now all of a sudden you've got this consistency that's happening from one move to the next. So you're
Because the
not like,
supportive wants each person like make sure that they're good to go. Yeah.
mhm.
Hmm.
But then when we look at it at the team or the relational perspective, it's taking this measured motion, and now it's not the terminology that's coming into mind is like a Morse code. It doesn't have, it's consistent in the way in which it's the movement is happening.
Hmm.
It is the idea that you're not having large moments of energy and then long moments of pause, where we're able to create the consistent motion, momentum, and movement, which then is brought through on the empowered side. It's where everything's coming into alignment, where and I love the idea of being a scalpel versus a hammer.
Hmm.
The empowered individual can come into a room and everything's a nail,
Hmm.
right? We've heard that terminology before,
Hmm.
rather than everything's a moment to bring it together, to tie
Hmm.
it together. And to come back to our analogy of being braided, this is that alignment that we're looking for. We're looking for equity. We're looking for the flow of everything being pulled snug together and operating in its strength.
Hmm. So let's take this outside of the work environment for a minute, because I think when people think about RISE or DISC or some of the other personality assessments, if you will,
Mhm.
it's often been taught to us from a place of the work environment, but we also live in other environments. We have families and we have friends and so on. So what might some of the interactions look like, for example, between husband and wife, for example, and one is this core temperament, one is that core temperament. Can you give us an example what that might look like?
Well, I think that anytime you add romantic or intimate relationships together, and I can say that confidently, even within friend groups,
Mm-hmm.
because even though there may not be physical intimacy, there's relational and emotional intimacy that's happening, that your friends
Mm-hmm.
really, really well because you've been with them for such a long period of time. And so anytime that there is a level of a deeper integration in the context of unmasking,
Mm-hmm.
that where we're not trying to be the professional,
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the essential ingredients that can exist, for the reflective, as an example, would be someone who's bringing a steadiness, or is is providing a stability in the midst of decision making, or in the decision in the process of movement
Sorry,
relationally.
you're talking about supportive, not reflective.
Yeah, so the reflective is stabilizing,
Right.
where the supportive is grounding.
Right.
So, and I think that the grounding is rooting, it's a depth,
Mm-hmm.
where reflective is stabilizing at the surface.
Okay.
So the reflective may not go deep into what's happening in this friend group, or in the partnership relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the stabilizing is keeping it even keel, so we're not rocking the boat, so to speak. Where the why we chose the word grounding is because of the depth, the roots. We thought of grounding as being the tree
Yeah.
or the plant that's the roots are driving deep, and
Right.
it becomes the what withstands the storm, so to speak.
So if I were to look at a friend group and there's four of the core temperaments reflected, uh, if I could use a different word,
Mhm.
because I didn't want to make it confusing. If we have four people with four different core temperaments, uh, could it look like you have your empowered person who is all about helping to drive you forward? They're asking the questions or encourage you, like, why aren't you doing this? Or like, here's this opportunity, or they're helping to like push you forward or push the group forward of like, let's do something more, whatever that group of friends looks like. And then you've got your supportive person who is like, okay, I can get on board with this. Like who they're looking around at the room and saying, who needs help to get to this place if they're not there already? And stop me if I'm wrong when I'm saying things, okay? And then you have the intentional who is all about, guys, let's do this. Are we all on board? Are you in? Are you in? They're, trying to pull everybody together and get the show on the road in that everybody's in it. And then you have your reflective person who might, you refer to them as possible stick in the mud, and they're slower to come along, but they're like, okay, did we think about this and did we think about that? And I think we can.
Mhm.
So I'm just giving a very kind of one-dimensional way that this might look, but is that fair for as a description for how the personalities, the core temperaments might look in a friendship group like that?
I would say yes. I think that most friendship groups are based on time, not identity.
Yeah.
I've known you since I was 6 years old. Blah. Like in some ways it could be I've tolerated you since I was 6 years old, or
It's
I
true.
like I've just we've been neighbors as kids, and we just stuck it out. We just stuck it together.
Yeah.
So I don't know that in the friend context we're trying to be as hyper strategic in how we are utilizing this. I think in most friend groups, as you evolve, some friends will fall off and others will kind
Hmm.
of get closer and deeper. And it's usually centered around shared activities or experiences
Yeah.
rather than the personalized identity. And so
Absolutely.
I love sports and I love to talk sports, as I have in the last couple of episodes. And so then part of that is I'm drawn to other people that want to talk about sports. I'm not necessarily concerned about what their temperament is. I just want to know, are we going to be able to talk about sports well? And so then I have other passions and activities. I play a lot of video games.
Yeah.
And so I want to spend time with people that are, want to talk or want to play video games. And so just a fun caveat in regards to the video game, there's three of us that play together as a trio. And one of us was basically a core introvert and never ever wants to make a decision. And then the other two of us are always arguing about who's making the decision and what are we going to go and do. And we try to force the introvert to make the decision because we can support that all day long, but he can't support our desire to do something more aggressive or silly or ridiculous.
Hmm.
And it creates comedy between us, but I think there's such a deep compassion for one another. I'm
Hmm.
gonna use a different word, but I think that there's just such a deep understanding that we love the game and we love this time together that we just lean into it, and it becomes comedy.
I think it's important here. I mean, you mentioned like having these things in common. We're generally speaking drawn to people that we have things in common with because it gives us something to talk about, right? From
Hmm.
a friendship relational perspective, right? But when we're talking about um, healthy relationships or healthy collaboration in a relationship, whatever that collaboration is about, we're not necessarily talking about sameness, right? Um,
Hmm.
because you and I could both like sports and have totally different perspectives, as you were just saying with your gaming. But there's still that level of everybody has a voice in the conversation, right? And we give each other permission to whatever style, core temperament that you operate in, that it's okay for you to be you and express yourself in whatever natural expression you have. When we're talking about healthy collaboration in relationship, right?
Hmm.
So, something that we haven't really expanded outwards is how we notice the styles of the people around us? We've kind of asked people to think about it, but we really haven't gone into it, right? How are some of the ways that we may misunderstand people if we don't pay attention to what their core temperament is? Whether
I think
how or
yeah.
why.
Well, I think the greatest danger is seeing everybody through your own lens.
Mm,
And that the challenge is, how do I see you as you? And there's a great phrase, and I've started to use this more often in my relationships, is that
mhm,
I'm going to trust that what you're giving me is you, and I'm just going to let that be in the middle of us, be in this sense of community, starting with two. And that as you and I have relationship, other people can go, oh wait, I want to be a part of that because I want to be trusted and I want to be seen, heard, and have an experience to contribute. And so the idea, and this would be a fantastic bridge moment, that as we move from pressure to permission,
mm,
the reflective is managing avoidance. That when we talk about the pressure, they shrink back
mhm,
in avoidance, versus having the permission to slow things down, to bring clarity. When the intentional is becoming overly expressive, hyperactive, gesture in the room, constantly throwing jokes around, to then allowing their energy to invite momentum. It doesn't have to be, it can be the spark, but not the reason is maintained,
right.
because that's too much for an intention. But then the supportive is working and managing with, this is too much for me. I need to step back. I need to hide. I don't want to be seen because I'm afraid of what it looks like. Or I don't want to be the one that's making the decision because I don't think I can follow it up. So there's a withdrawal. And the empowered can come through with such a sense of urgency that everything is an emergency. Everything
Mhm,
must be done and completed in the now,
mhm,
versus allowing time to be the balancing point.
mhm.
And that, and my wife and I have a great line that we love to use, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't be in the best version of me if it wasn't for you, but sometimes I wouldn't be in the worst version of me if it wasn't for you, kind of idea. And it's this duality. It's this, and you said that at the beginning, and there's a great book that I loved diving into, and it's called Dancing with Darkness.
Mm,
And the idea of wrestling with the shadow of who we are. So, can the reflective begin to wrestle with their desire for avoidance? Can the intentional wrestle with their overexpression? Can the supportive wrestle with withdrawal? Can the empowered wrestle with this sense of urgency and become their own counter to the problem? Is really kind of what we're trying to evoke in the conversation here.
absolutely. And something, again, that we haven't really delved into is that some of the descriptions, for example, for intentional makes them sound super extroverted.
Mm.
Or the, into the reflective person might be super introverted, just from some of the descriptions that we're talking about. But actually, it's a completely, that's a whole other thing to look at it,
Mhm.
extroverted versus introverted, RISE,
Yeah.
whatever that is, because the holding back or the pushing forward or the getting people on board is going to look different for an extrovert versus an introvert. And so when we look at, who are the people around us that we are kind of like sandpaper with, we don't get
Mm.
them, or we misunderstand things, or we have a certain perspective of who they are because they don't fit the mold of what we're expecting, what we think they actually are in terms of
Mhm.
their core temperament. Um, And you rightfully said, like, we've got to learn to step back, put our notions of who they're supposed to be on a shelf, and just really observe to see, okay, how do they make decisions? How
Mm-hmm.
do they step back when there's a trigger, if we can even recognize those triggers for
Mm-hmm.
them. And the more that we begin to see those things, I think that we begin to move into this place now of safety, from the perspective that they start to feel safe because you're not having those abrasive moments, because you're letting them be who they are, um, versus dismissing dismissing them in certain situations
Mm-hmm.
because you just don't get where they're coming from. You don't understand that they've been triggered by something that you actually could help to put away, because being a
Mm-hmm.
person in a healthy relationship, you can just you might have the right words to say, oh, don't worry about that, that's not important, or
Yeah.
no, this is something that you can do, like whatever the situation calls for. So that might be something that we need to talk about in future in a
Oh,
future
I mean,
episode.
there's so much that we got to continue to talk about, and I look forward to having this forum in this space to kind of throw ideas out into the ether. I think that in while we were building Empower You, while we were building out this coaching perspective and model, that one of the essential things that we wanted to combat was the issue of tribalism. The issue that in today's culture, whether it's video, short form video, the way in which information is consumed, it's this echo chamber of context, is
Hmm.
that we're constantly being placed into an algorithm that's agreeing with what we're ultimately doing, which, I mean, when we're
It doesn't
talking about
help us
this
with our
stuff,
conversation, or our internal
not at all.
conversation, right? Yeah.
No, not at all. And I
Right.
mean, remembering that collaboration is not sameness.
Right.
We will not get to the desired outcome or the desired goal if everyone is the same.
Hmm.
And it's the idea of, how do I know me at my core, at my essential, and yet how do I not impose me on
Hmm.
others? How do
Hmm.
I bring me solid strength, courage, all these kind of adjective words, but not overwhelming?
Hmm.
How do I make sure that I'm contributing to the space in the middle? How does my strength and my identity become a place of restraint?
Yeah.
And that this internal cue is often misunderstood.
Hmm.
We're assuming that no, I have to do this. So
Or I have to be right on this, or yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that this, and maybe even you've been kind of in this journey. Yes, we've been doing this for numerous years between you and I, but I think that there is some newness to this even for you.
Yeah.
And maybe share with our audience a little bit about some of the hacks. Like, what are you starting to see in your own kind of uncovering of this anchoring for yourself? And I know we've got a couple of other assessments that we draw into our conversations that we haven't
Hmm.
actually unpacked yet.
Right.
So where are you at in your unpacking, kind of your process?
I don't know if it's a short answer. It's a great question. I think to talk about the journey itself, I have really found that I listen a lot more to people, not because I don't have anything to say or don't want to say anything, so much as it is, I've come to recognize in myself that in the past, I've spoken from a place of, what's the word? Like predisposition, like I'm expecting
Mm,
certain things. I predetermined things in my head and not given others the chance to let things come out as they are, whatever. And so I, can tend
mhm,
to look very much like a empowered person at times. And so in stepping back to really listen to people, I've become better at recognizing how they're wired. Can I sit here and like label people in their core temperaments? Not as good as you. I would be lying if I said that. However, because I recognize how people tend to move in terms of their ebbs and flows of energy and decision making and so on, I, as a supportive person, actually get to show up better because I've recognized certain things that those like individuals around me need, whether it's in a work environment or
Mm-hmm.
friendships or whatever. And so my journey really now is to be able to, I hate to say it this way because it's a little cringy, but like to label people in their core temperaments simply because the reason I want to do it is because being able to do that helps to bring language immediately to how they may operate in any given situation.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I can, you know, act like a crystal ball because I know that, but now when certain things happen and they react a certain way, I can revert back to, oh yeah, they're intentional. So this is probably what's coming up in them. How can I support them in this? How can I help them to move forward? How can I help them
Mm-hmm.
to bring closure or resolve whatever the situation is that's happening around them? So to answer your big question, I think that would be immediately kind of a very short clip of where I'm at in my journey.
Which I think exactly how you just put it is the very thing we're looking for our audience to gain as well.
Yes, absolutely.
That as we've moved through these first 18, 19 episodes, the idea is, are you wrestling with you? Are you even allowing yourself to move from
Hmm.
pressure to permission?
Hmm.
Are you allowing yourself to then be you in the knowledge and awareness of what's happening around you so that everyone's on the same page, and not even the same page, they're on their own page, we're in the book together
It's
kind
where
of idea.
empowerment starts to exist on all
Yes,
sides.
which,
Absolutely. That's what
no
it's
pun
about.
intended, no pun
No,
intended,
no,
but
no. Every
fully
pun
in
was intended.
every one of them, right? So I think that as we draw down this conversation and coming back to being braided,
Hmm.
I'd love for you to kind of end your brief kind of unpacking there. Do you know? Okay, there's a twofold question. Number one, do you think you know which of the core temperaments you most need in your life? And or who are you to the to each of the temperament? You can answer them both, or you can just kind of say, no, 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 I have a better sense of me versus what I'm bringing versus what I need.
Hmm. Um, I think I can definitively answer both parts of the question. So I know that I'm supportive. I show up as a supportive core temperament. However, there are situations where I definitely show up as an empowered um, core temperament as like a secondary thing. It depends on the personalities in the situation, but there's something in me behind the supportive, like, yes, we still need to move forward. With that being said, as a supportive individual, um, I do actually required and the things that an empowered individual brings to the table. I need to be pushed to move forward. That's something within me because of how I'm wired. In terms of the intentional and the um, reflective, I think I operate a little bit more like a chameleon, but the intentional definitely always puts me out of my comfort zone because their ability to connect with people like so quickly is a huge challenge for me. However, having them in a room with me actually helps to put the nerves at ease because I know there's a certain level of them being able to build some relationship, but as their partner in crime, so to speak, for any situation, I'm gonna just pick up and run with whatever they can develop in those early moments with new people and so on. So I think that's how I would answer it at this point in time.
And I love how you did that. I love that there's this unique idea, and even centering back on the intentional at the very end there, it's the essential quality that that person brings to the room.
Absolutely.
And each of us are bringing an essential quality to the room. It's how are we really building a practice around what is our essential practice and what is the essential practice that I need?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to necessarily answer that because I think that's part of the journey
I think it's
that
different for everybody. I'm right with you. It's
should
part of
be.
the
Yeah,
journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I'm not I'm not afraid of diversity like I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that even in diversity there should be tension. But the tension isn't combative. It's how are we pulling at each other? How are we drawing out your strength, my strength? How is it coming to the middle without trampling others?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as we are having this conversation, as we're wrestling with some of these ideas, I think there's a different way to build community that is both deeply relational and highly productive.
Yeah, absolutely. Which we are going to leave for the next episode. Yeah, so we'll wrap up here. And it's been such a pleasure. We're almost done season 2. Eight. This is completing episode 8. And we have 2 more to go. So we'll be wrapping up some things that we've discussed throughout this season. We really enjoy hearing from you guys and hope that these conversations are meaningful for you in a way that helps to bring up questions within yourself to help you expand the way that you see the world around you. And love to hear your comments and questions about the things as you ponder them. So we look forward to another session next week, and we hope that you have an amazing week until then. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.